Welcome to Community Radio, for and by Indigenous, Black, and racialized people with disabilities, designed to share our stories and experiences as we navigate the world. Operating on the land of many traditional territories, Community Radio is recorded on Turtle Island and Inuit Nunavut. Our participants' stories and opinions are that of their own and represent as such. Welcome to Community Radio, Episode 1. What can't Ben do? Public speaking, music creation through a hip-hop, R&B, comedy, and an adrenaline junkie. In this episode, Ben talks about his many different flavors of life, creating a funky, cool individual. Using comedy to change perspectives, Ben hopes to create spaces in which we can think and talk about disability in a different way. Ben talks about media, adrenaline, social work, and his organization, the Brightside Scope. Presenting this week's guest, Ben, with Mics at the End of the Tunnel, Unconventional Perspectives from the Media Jack of All Trades. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I'm very excited. Before we start, can you just state your name and your pronouns?
Of course, my name is Ben Aquaco, and my pronouns are he and him.
Awesome, thank you. And as always, my name is Amira. I'm the Community Learning Coordinator here at Race and Disability Canada. So let's get into it. What was your experience growing up with a disability and being part of a racial minority? And how do you feel these identities intersect for you?
Of course, wonderful question. Yeah, it's definitely been a journey. Just to give everybody context to who listening right now, I'm a person who is of Ghanaian descent. Both my parents were born in Kumasi, Ghana. And then also, I'm an individual who lives with low vision, retinitis pigmentosa. I was diagnosed at 2 years old. Um, right now, I'm a cane user, so a white cane user. And then also, I am a screen reader user. So for those who don't know, where my computer and my cell phone are talking to me. Um, definitely, it definitely a big journey for sure because as a person who was diagnosed at 2 years old, I used to have more vision than what I have now.
Mm,
So I had the ability to what they say pass as a person who had sight. So
mm,
I never really understood that I actually had low vision at the time. I thought I was just like everybody saw the same way.
of course.
And then as a young person, like I didn't realize that, oh my gosh, like I am different, but what I could bounce a basketball and shoot it at a rim, or I could catch a football. Like, nah, this makes no sense, right?
Right.
Yeah. So basically, even coming from a family of Ghanaian descent,
Mm,
it was where I was kind of told that, oh, like you shouldn't really publicize it. Oh,
mm,
you do everything as like a quote unquote normal. Like you don't have
mm,
low vision or aspects such as that, right? So for years, it was kind of like hiding the fact that I had low vision and not really utilizing the services unless I really had to, right? So
mm,
the teaching how to get around with a cane or even teaching me braille, they had to
mm,
input that into school, right?
mhm,
And then on top of that, being a young black male,
mm,
also not having that mentorship side of it, right? So as a young black male, we look to like sports stars or we look to entertainment,
mm,
right?
of
And
course.
even as a person living with a disability, it's like you don't see people like you. It's almost like, oh, these are all able-bodied people, right? S-
Yeah,
So it was
totally.
yeah, so it's almost like you're kind of like, where do I fit in? And then having that culture that didn't really understand disability. And then on the other side, and this is what I know you folks promote at Race and Disability Canada, the other side of disabilities, not really understanding the culture.
Mm.
Yeah, so even a perfect example of that was something that we call independent living skills for us in the blind, low vision community,
Hmm.
where they teach you with your usable vision or the vision that you don't have, how to live independently and certain skills. The one thing I remember when I was doing independent living skills is I don't know for those folks who know West African food or even African food, jollof rice.
Yeah,
It's just so tasty. The
so good.
best, yeah, yeah, one of the best foods ever. And even as a young person, be like, I want to learn how to make jollof rice. And the instructor not really knowing like, what's jollof rice? We're gonna teach you how to make mac and cheese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and having a lack of both intersectionalities celebrated on your each side. So like even like I said, the cultural side, that disability side is not celebrated. And then you
Mm.
have on the disability side, yeah, culture is not celebrated. So it's like, where do I fit in to get in? You know, that expression for sure. So um, I gotta say, it has been a lot of soul searching. It has been a lot of connecting with your community, connecting with people with similar situations. And that's why I'm very, very blessed for now that we have organizations to address those intersecting identities. And this is definitely a vehicle for even myself to collaborate and do things such as this to celebrate and say, okay, we need more awareness when it comes to
Mm.
both these factors. And we need to start bridging the gap. And I know we're going to talk more about things I do to bridge the gap and have a nice discussion. So definitely, I would say that's kind of me growing up with my two intersecting identities.
Thank you. That's such a beautiful answer. I do want to ask you more about your story, but before then, I kind of want to ask you a bit of an off the book question, just as you had mentioned about community and especially in the Black community within representation of We Look to Sports Stars. Just curious if you, growing up, had any really positive experience in media of disability or individuals that are within the Black community, or possibly both. I'm not sure if there were.
Yeah, basically, and I feel like this is the answer for a lot of Black blind individuals, Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles.
Ah, of course.
And then you add that into the fold, just like I was making mention of like sports stars and that
Mm.
physical entertainers, then you add on the other side Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles. So then it's like, oh, I gotta make music and play a piano, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
the experience of being a Black man of sports music are kind of the things that are pushed. And then what else?
Yeah. So I found that even kind of trickling into my story is the fact
Mm.
that I didn't really identify with having a disability or even sight
Mm.
loss, right? Because growing up with so many people who were able-bodied around me, or at the time realizing that what able-bodied was, or the so-called normal, and have my fingers with it in parentheses or like,
Yeah.
quotes, right? Air quotes, normal, where it was uh the fact that I wanted to just strive to be a able-bodied person, right? So a lot of my role
Mm.
models were, especially in the Black community, were able-bodied individuals, right? So like
Mm.
the sports stars, so like the entertainers, so like the public figures, right?
Of
And
course.
I didn't feel the need to like reach out, or it was no one in my face who looked like me, who had the same
Mm.
situation, right? So it was almost like, okay, I'm gonna go more so the able-bodied aspect, but then at the same time, it's just like when you do look up to people, like I said, you want those same aspects to be the same. So I couldn't fully be like, oh, I really want to be like this person, but would they ever understand as a person who
Mm,
has low vision, right? So it was really hard to really find a true mentor. Um, at the same time, I'm very blessed to have like family
mm,
who I could kind of mentor off of, but like that still brings back the aspect of understanding like disability as at the same time. But I feel like it was a good mix. And even as I got older, to start finding mentors with
mm,
disabilities who represented Blackness, I
mm.
am very grateful, and that's actually gonna kind of take us further where probably my next answer further down. That's what I'm a fortune teller right now. I'm a psychic right now, but definitely in the future of what we're gonna speak about, I'll probably speak about mentorship and how I want to take that role because I had that lack of full representation for sure.
Of course. And you haven't heard the intro I've written for you yet, but it's a
Oh,
long list of what can you not do, listing 87 basically
uh,
things of kind of a jack of all trades, but trying to coin a different term. So I kind of jumped us ahead. So why don't we lead into if there's more of your story that you'd like to share and kind of how that segues into how you got started in media and entertainment.
yeah, for sure. So, basically, when I was younger, I just loved everything about like entertaining, right? Like, I love to dance. I love to just create stories. I love the aspect of like acting. I love the aspect of like public speaking, right? So, I remember, and this actually made me quite enduring to my friends and classmates and family members where I just loved creativity, right? So
Mm,
anytime we had an opportunity to like do a presentation, I'd add this like spin on, whoa, did he just do that? Or in class when we had to create plays, I wanted everything I had my fingers on to be just entertaining, where people be like, whoa, I can't forget about that instead of this boring ramble, right?
yeah.
So that actually goes into the question of representation. Like, I
Mm,
never believed that, oh, like I could actually do stand up or I could actually be in commercials or actually do music because it was just never anybody who I really identified with, right?
mm,
But
makes sense.
yeah, you fast forward now, we're in the 2020s and like 2020s and up, and it's just so many opportunities. And I'm like, nowhere. I do have potential. I've been making music for years. I really want to get into the acting field and such. And this is the time to do it because people are asking for that type of representation. So that's where the passion, where I'm like, yeah, people say I'm a funny guy, you know what I mean?
I've
Uh,
been entertained.
exactly. I love that. And then also people are like, oh, like, yeah, I could see you in a commercial. I could see you doing PSA. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it, where even to be in that entertainment and that media, and then having that day in the age where intertwined in media now, we have public awareness, right?
Hmm.
So I forgot to mention also I am a master's graduate of social work
Hmm.
and a bachelor's of social work in SSW. So I got triple threats. I'm a registered social worker. I've been in the helping field for more than 10 years. And I feel like it's such a great time because I can incorporate my love for entertainment and my love for public awareness at the same time. So I feel like this is a perfect time to, if I'm going to do stand-up comedy in a way that's awareness, where when you do stand-up comedy, you do challenge kind of the ridiculousness of how we feel. So like people yeah, actually, one of the things I think about when people come up to me and they're just like, I'm holding my cane and I'm standing there, and people are just like, "Oh, like, do you have vision issues? Are you blind?" And I'm like,
Mm.
I think so. I don't know. I guess.
I think so.
And and it's just bringing humor to kind of look at like, oh, like this is how we think in society, like aspects such as that. So I really, really love how I could bring representation. I could bring a humorous mix to it. And then I could bring something on TV screens or YouTube or any aspects of like public awareness for people
Mm,
to see a different face and be like, oh, wow, like, okay, like yo, this is some representation, having someone for disability, having someone racialized, and he's still thoroughly entertaining and still really captures my imagination. So I really, really, really enjoy that aspect, right?
yeah, and I mean, I'm again entertained, so I feel, you've got that way with
Yeah,
people, so I love that.
yeah.
I'm going to give you a shameless plug as something you had mentioned before that you were a part of Georgian's public awareness video for the Accessibility Office. And
Yep.
I'm curious if you wanted to speak about that or if that sort of intersected what inspired you to get into motivating and educating the public.
Amira, that's old news. That's 2013. Yeah. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Plug it
Actually,
all.
actually, that was my gateway into actually being on camera, right? So I
Mm,
remember like even when I was as Caribbean say a youth, a young person, and I remember like we would just make just home videos, right? And
mhm,
play these characters and everything. And then that was the first time that when I was in my bachelor's of social work at Laurentian/Georgian, they're like, oh,
uh,
we want to make this campaign for the accessibility office, right? And I was
yes.
like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I'm actually on camera and it's actually edited nice and music added onto it. And
Mm,
I remember doing that. And like I said, that was the gateway to show that hey, I could be on camera and I could go through that whole process of like the production where they're like, okay, stand over here. Okay, can you say it like this? Okay, can you say it like this? And then on
mm,
top of that, having that ability to show public awareness. And then having that ability to educate, and then having that ability to be like, oh, that's my face on a YouTube screen. Look at that. I made it, mama. I made it. You know what I mean?
I
So
love that.
yeah, but it was really, really cool. And like I said, that's where it all started in 2000, I believe. Yeah, I guess 2013. That's where it was just like, yeah, I want to do this. I like the lights, camera, action, and I love at the same time advocacy at the same time.
Mm. That's awesome. I can't believe how long ago that was. I was going to say what, like 5 years ago, but no, I'm old. So like about
No,
11 years ago.
I'm old too, so it's all good.
We'll just call this episode Old People Rambling About Things.
Vintage nostalgia.
Exactly. So I'm curious if you'd like to share a little bit about how your experience has been as a racialized person with a disability, kind of shaping your overall life experience, if there's anything you'd like to speak to.
Of course, of course. So even just to bring it back, and so as a racialized person, as I made mention, being a product of Ghana, West Africa, and having both my parents born in Ghana and many of my
Mm,
family members born in Ghana, it's a beautiful thing. And this is why I feel that cultures should be celebrated with disability, where
mm,
being that product of Ghana, you really have perspective in life, right?
mm,
And it
mm,
really helps you with that whole gratitude. So, when I visited Ghana in 2011, I got to have a snapshot of kind of the simple life, right?
mm, mhm,
I had a snapshot of how like people lived, right? Like here it's so much like, oh, we gotta be here, we gotta do this, we gotta do this. Oh, if you don't do this, it's whatever, right? But even to be in Ghana and just to learn how you have to be resilient, especially the time that my parents came from, or even the Kumasi, Ghana. where my
Mm.
parents came from, where you built in resiliency, and hearing the stories from my
Um,
dad
mhm.
on how he came to Canada, it builds in this resiliency that some North Americans don't have, right? And some
Mm,
of our Canadian culture doesn't have, where sometimes we look at things and we let things bother us, right? Or we let
absolutely.
yeah, we let different aspects get to us. But because just being involved with that, it built this resiliency where like my parents just hustled to get to where they are. And that mentality has been adopted, right? Where you don't let the little
Mm,
things get to you, you don't let certain barriers get to you. So I really commend my parents. I really commend my cultures for putting that into me. That kind of
mm,
like, okay, you didn't have it before, hustle to get it, right?
yeah.
And then also adding in the disability side of it,
Mm,
because as a person living with a disability, as we all know, the world's not really made for us sometimes, right?
mhm,
So it's almost that same hustle where it's just like, okay, if I'm gonna go for schooling, it's gonna be a tough road, but I'm gonna make it through, right?
mm,
If I'm going to
absolutely.
go through employment, like it's not an easy road, but I'm going to figure it out, right?
Mm,
Social life, I gotta figure it out. Dealing with people, I gotta figure it out. Customer service, I gotta figure it out. Like even housing and the mentality of people, I gotta figure it out, right?
absolutely.
And the one thing that just having this mentality of um Ghanaian descent, being a black male, also having a disability, it embodies this. I don't care how I'm gonna get to where I gotta be. I
Mhm,
just gotta be there because I I have been exposed to what it feels like to not have something, right?
mm,
And then as a person with disability, I've been exposed to the low standards of people and having the
mm,
expectations of just being on ODSP, right? So
yes.
for myself, I can't do it. I want more, right? So just
Mm,
having those two intersectionalities, it almost makes me super resilient to where I want to be, wherever anything means necessary to get to where I want to be, right? Because if you were to, I would say, unfortunately, the negative stigmas and taboos about uh, a racialized person with a disability, you're not supposed to make it far, right?
absolutely. That's the
Mm,
assumption.
hmm. And heck no, I'm gonna make it as far as I can get to, and then at the same time, I deserve to live my dreams just like everybody else. So I'm gonna find a way to live my dream and be at the places I want to be and accomplish goals that sometimes I never thought would be imaginable. So no matter what, anything means necessary in my mind for sure.
I love that ferocity. You're kind of leading me into the next question. And so, for a lot of us who are Indigenous, Black, racialized, with a disability, we can kind of feel like we don't belong in space, you know?
Hmm.
And even if we've earned our way to get there. So, how do you combat that imposter syndrome? Because the confidence is like oozing through my screen. So, how can we do that? How did you
uh,
do that?
know what? Like, even with that said, and I gotta tell even the audience, I still have imposter syndrome. I was actually just talking to a friend, and sometimes
Mm,
I feel that when I do speak, I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'm the right person to speak about this, or I don't think I could offer more. But I think the way that really helped me combat imposter syndrome
mhm,
is being connected to a community
mm,
and being lucky enough to have supports out there, right? So um I say community
mhm.
where things like Race and Disability Canada, right? Things
Sounds
like
great.
organizations that are disability focused and even race focused, and just being a part of kind of that public speaking scope and that education scope where when I do a presentation, I think to myself, whatever, no one wants to know about accessibility and what can I tell them? But when I do share my story, and then people coming up to me and they're like, thank you for sharing your story. I did not even know that. Or when I done a presentation in a classroom and there's a kid who is racialized, who has a disability, and they're like, wow, like at first I didn't want to even come here. And then I heard you and I was just like, wow, like this is really amazing, right? So that definitely helps with sometimes a lack of confidence and that feeling of imposter syndrome,
Mm,
and just hearing other people's experiences, similar experiences, and hearing other people's vulnerability as well, right? So um it does take time. it it's like building a house. You have to start
mm,
from the foundation, but definitely just being involved in your community, um knowing that's going to take time, and then knowing that when you see someone doing their thing, right? What's the difference
mm,
between them and you? Or what is the difference? And even if it is any sort of correlating difference, how to build yourself to be that way, right?
mm. Yeah.
So it definitely that's the biggest part of kind of combating that imposter syndrome. And it's just so rewarding, like I said, to have that feedback from people, and then at the same time be able to listen, right?
Mm,
And because I know sometimes, and I gotta be quite honest, sometimes coming from that marginalization of being a person who's racialized and living with a disability, you're like, you can't tell me nothing. Like, I don't want to
sure.
take your your advice. I don't trust you, but sometimes it's important to just kind of listen to others,
Mm.
and then at the same time just kind of take it as like a buffet. Take what you will. Maybe it might not apply to you. Take what applies to you and what you can really use to combat that imposter syndrome for sure.
I love that. And the analogy of a house, I think, is so great because, you can't build a house on your own. And
Mm-hmm.
hey, a house isn't perfect once it's done. There will be cracks, etc. Like you need the community, and there's always things you can learn from people to help you work on things. So
Mm-hmm.
it's lovely. Really great
Mm-hmm.
analogy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to shift gears for a moment. So, for anyone listening, Ben and I had a chance to talk before this, and he had mentioned he'd been skydiving and done marathons. And
Yeah.
I want to talk about this. Tell us
Mm.
about your, I'm not sure what to call them, adrenaline junkie fueled activities. What got you into doing these? Why are you doing these? And what's next?
Yeah, I ask myself the same question all the time. What am I thinking? You know what I mean?
What?
Um, it's very interesting because I was just talking to a friend a few hours ago, and the one thing even just as a young people, when
Mhm.
someone expected me to turn right, I'd always turn left, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
out of that expectation. So, with a person with a disability, I found that sometimes people already have that notion of who you are as a person, right?
Mm,
So I was even joking around with a friend where, like, when someone first meets me and they see me with a cane, they see I'm a person who has low vision, and it's just like, so what are you gonna do on the weekend, right? And
yes.
they're probably just like thinking, oh, he's probably gonna stay home, be on his
Mm.
computer. He probably doesn't go out. But to say like, yo, I just jumped out of a plane, and it was crazy, It was whoo, it was wow. And to just for that person to be like, what? You jumped out? What? Like,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? And I feel that I don't want to take away from my life and do things that I I I don't know, feel like because I have low vision or blindness or low vision, I
Hmm.
guess blindness is incorporated too, because I have that I have to take away from my life, right?
Mm,
And
absolutely.
everything, like I always saw people jump out of a plane. I'm like, whoa, that's wow. Like not many people can do that. I'm gonna do it. You know what? I'm gonna do it, right? And then I found that even I'm training for a marathon in October, and I'm just like,
Mm,
I need to do that. You know what I mean? I just need to break out of what people think a person who's blind or low vision can do, right? And I
yeah.
know and I have confidence in myself that I can do it, right? And even with that said, it kind of sounds like my answer is, oh, you're just doing it to prove people wrong, right? Uh
Mm.
yeah, no, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say I'm doing it to prove people wrong. It's because, you know what? I never thought I could do it and I want to do it, right?
Mm,
And I just think stuff like that is just I I remember hearing from a motivational video, and I think it's Les Brown, and I don't know if we're allowed to mention names. If this is
yeah,
gonna be
absolutely.
okay, if this is gonna be bleeped out, like, but yeah, with Les Brown, I remember he was doing a speech, and he was just saying, like, if we were in our deathbeds or on our deathbeds, and pretty much when we were dying, our dreams and our ambition were buried with us.
Mm,
And even I think to that, like, do I want to one day, because I know I'm gonna live till 150.
of
For
course.
sure. For sure. Yeah, exactly. That's a goal. And I find to myself when I am living in my deathbed, will I think to myself, I always want to do this, but never had the chance or never had the guts to do it. So having that mentality, no, like if I ever dreamt it and I always had the passion to do it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna live this life the way I want to live it, right? So
Mm,
those are the aspects of like jumping out of a plane and running a marathon. And I feel like with things like that, it's just so fulfilling. And it's
mm.
just these feelings that you just like, they can't be replicated unless you do it again, right? But actually, you know what? I even take that back, where jumping out of the plane for the first time will not feel the same as jumping out of the plane again. And
uh,
running a marathon will not, or the first time you run a marathon will never feel like the first time or the next time you run it. So just these feelings and these moments, and I definitely want to live for them and not let like negativity or barriers of disabilities hold me back as well.
I love that. So we'll be seeing you as the next person up Mount Everest, I assume, at 150 years old, just really breaking all the
Eh,
records.
Unless you come with me,
Oh
for
gosh,
sure.
cold and hiking. Oh, I don't know.
Uh,
Okay, so obviously we have Mount Everest at 150 now on your checklist for an
hmm
accomplishment. But of all the accomplishments you've done so far, which ones are you the most proud of and why?
Yeah, this, you know what? I do have a whole list, but I
Lay it on
will
me.
do the ones that come to my head first. So, um, I would say getting my master's and of social
Mm,
work. And it's such a beautiful thing because, first of all, I remember doing a speech for employment success, and that was all the way in 2014.
mm.
And I just love hindsight, and I love kind of looking back. And I remember just mentioning, I really want to do my master's one day. I really want to do my master's one day, and then it coming true. And then also something that really makes it even more emotional is the fact that I once upon a time did apply for my master's, and this was in 2015, I believe, after I got laid off from a job,
Mm.
and I didn't get in.
Ah,
And with rejection, right? Sometimes once we get
Mm,
rejected once, we don't try again, right?
absolutely.
And to overcome that rejection, um, years later, and to be honest, I gotta say, like, when you really look at it, I didn't really have to do my master's because I was already employed, and I feel like I was always somewhat stable.
Mm,
So I didn't really have to do it, but it was just something that I really wanted to do, and it was something that I really want to accomplish. And then at the same time, obviously, it's always good to have credentials.
of course.
So even just walking that stage was so big, and even rewinding past wanting to do it. I remember when I was young and in elementary school and even high school,
Mm,
being a black male living with a disability, never wanted to reach my full potential, a lot of low standards, a lot of
mm,
hiding um, my my enthusiasm for school, a lot of people kind of giving up on me, and a lot of even self-doubt, right?
mm,
And
mhm,
honestly, I C plus or C student, C plus, whatever, right? I just
mm,
wasn't into school. I wouldn't use my technology either because I was too embarrassed.
ah,
And I feel that fast forward to 2022 when I accomplished my master's of social work, it really showed that no matter what, if you do have kind of that late starts
mhm,
and you do have that kind of underachiever, the imposter syndrome, like you could still accomplish it. And I feel like it came full circle because during my master's, I used my technology. I used my resources. I used my experiences. I applied myself. So everything that I thought back in the day, and even looking at my bachelor, I remember my bachelor, I failed my first first classes when I first
mm.
started because you're away from home and you're just like party, party, yeah, no, no more parents. And I failed my first course and I was on
Mm,
academic probation. Fast forward to my master's, I got everything in on time. Probably a week before, I used my technology, I used my resources. I was just deadpan focused, and I was able to advocate for myself for accommodations. And it's just such a huge accomplishment because it's just like coming from where I started and all the trials and tribulations, finally educated wise. And for those who believe like, I'm educated because what do you know? But it's such a huge accomplishment for sure, and it's something that really holds my heart, and I'm really passionate about to let people know that no matter what, don't let people write you off for sure. And I guess little accomplishments, well, not little, other accomplishments that kind of trickle in there is running the half marathon, and then definitely gonna run this marathon as an accomplishment, and then even becoming like a homeowner, right? And like
wow.
on my own, becoming a homeowner. Um, Other aspects, I would say, yeah, just getting up there. Right now, I'm opening my own business, the Brightside Scope, and uh, that looks at it's just like what we're discussing right now, intersecting identities and bringing public awareness to media and all those aspects. So, yeah, just accomplishing all those different things and even being able to sit down with you on a podcast as well. And even the podcast I have, The Lens Living Diverse, it's just all these things that I always dreamed of doing. And I'm very, very proud of those accomplishments for sure.
First of all, congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
Second, if those are small accomplishments, I'd hate to hear what you consider a big accomplishment. Those are all like absolutely incredible. Um,
Mount Everest. There we go. That's
right. That's our joint one on the list, of course.
Mhm.
So my question is, what advice would you give to the young Indigenous, Black, and racialized people with disabilities who are navigating their identities and seeking to make their voices heard?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely, as I was highlighting, number one, build a community. Reach out to people who have similar circumstances, right? And then
Mm,
reach out to, I like to say, the OGs, you know what I mean? Like the individuals who have experienced it, and then at the same time, people your generation as well. And the one thing that we like to push so much is, oh, like you read a book for information, you read a textbook to get information. I feel the most valuable information and the most effective, impactful information are people
mm,
and people's stories and people's experience. And I feel like when you listen to people, you gain so much information. Like it's almost
mhm,
as effective as encyclopedia. So I would say build your community and build that community where it's your safe tribe,
mm,
where you could have people that you trust and have people who can really guide you for sure. And have people that you could be vulnerable around and have people that you could be honest around for sure.
I love
And
that. Mhm,
yeah. And then also, I would say reach out to organizations. And I keep plugging
mm,
Race and Disability Canada and
woo,
uh, different organizations as well, because, uh, like I said, they're very prosperous with resources.
mm,
And then also, they could give you a platform on where
mhm,
you want to be, right? So if you're ever a person who wants to get into creative arts or you want funding for creative arts, these organizations could definitely point you in the right direction.
mm,
And then also, I'm going to bring up the build a house analogy.
mhm,
Uh, yeah, just dig down deep. It's a social worker talking in me, and just reflect on yourself and reflect
mm,
on how you could get to the places that you want to get to, right? So build yourself up, build yourself up, and definitely have that confidence and know that you're worth it. And even just looking at race, right?
mhm,
There's many things that I wouldn't know outside of my race, right?
right.
Where if I sat down with someone who identified with that race, they could teach me a lot, right? And that
Mhm,
information is invaluable. So important to have that information, and people are
mhm,
seeking. So share it. Know that you are an amazing resource to share, and then also know that you're worth it, even disability wise, and having those intersections of disability. So I would love to hear a story about a person who's a female Muslim with a disability.
mhm,
And I would love to hear that experience. I'd love to hear a person who's an immigrant from Asia that is coming to Canada with a disability. I
mm,
would love to hear a person who is West Indies and how they navigate through where they live in the West Indies. And it's just these stories that are so valuable and that people are wanting to hear and wanting to listen to. So if you're okay with sharing those stories and you're okay with having that vulnerability, don't feel that it's not valuable.
mm.
It's very, very important. So build yourself up and don't be afraid to build yourself up for sure.
Such a beautiful answer. I only have a few more questions for you. I'm going to throw you a curveball one. So,
Hmm.
as you know, we call this community radio. So, question I'm trying to ask everyone is who is your community or what makes up your community?
Of course. So it definitely there's been organizations that popped up in the last few years. So shout outs to Black Voices United.
Mm,
And that was a group started within the CNIB by individuals who identified as Black and people living with low vision.
Mm-hmm.
And that was developed after the whole thing with George Floyd.
Mm.
And that was definitely a gateway to say, okay, let's sit down and let's talk about being a Black person with low vision. And uh, it was such a good way where it's just like, oh my gosh, oh, like I remember that too, or oh,
Mm.
like as a person with sight loss, and you go to a place like Caravana, or you go to one of the festivals, or you go to Afrofest, and you just don't know where to go and this stuff, and I
Mm.
feel like that gave us such a great platform to to laugh, to reflect, to support each other. So that was such a great community to build a tribe.
Oh.
And then also I'd say shout outs to Ashe as well, where it's an
Mhm.
organization that's really focused on Blackness and disabilities. So it
Mhm.
definitely a great platform to to get that good work out there, right? And to recruit people and get the message across, right?
Mhm.
And then also I would say Dean Vision. And
Mhm.
actually, a funny story with Dean Vision was I remember, I believe it was around 2020 or 2021, and I got an advertisement about Dean Vision, and it was, I just saw, oh, racialized group, right? And I
Mm.
remember joining the group, and I found out that it was predominantly Muslim, right?
Mm. Yes.
And I remember I'm not a person who practice Islam. I'm not Christian, so I was like, oh, I think
Mm.
I'm in the wrong group, right? So I went a couple of times and I didn't go again. And I
Mhm.
remember Azar, who runs the group, he reached out to me. He's like, "Why are you not coming anymore?" And I was just like, I don't know. I don't think I I fit the criteria."
Right.
Yeah, and he said, "Doesn't matter. Keep coming. We really value you. We really like having you there." And fast forward 2, 3 years later, and I still take part, and it's like a family, right? It's a family, and
Awesome.
such a beautiful family, and I learned so much about even that culture as well. And then people learn so much about me, myself, and then having the disability aspect incorporated. And I still remember it's such a funny moment where Vision, they were visiting W. Ross McDonald, the blind school in Brantford. And I live close to Brantford. So I remember dropping by to say hi to everybody. I'm like, this is my family. Yo, my family's here. And everybody's like, hey, you know what I mean? And it's just,
Aw.
I feel like such a beautiful thing. So that definitely is example just because I don't practice the same faith. And
Mhm.
then just because it's maybe a different culture doesn't mean that we can't be a tribe and can't be a community. So I find all those different communities that I mentioned are my communities. And then actually, last but not least,
Mhm.
even being a person who had more vision, sometimes what we call high partial, uh,
Mhm.
just building that community in the sighted world. And although
Mm.
my vision has deteriorated, having the ability for people to just be like, yo, you're the same Ben that I remember. You're the same knucklehead that I have remembered for years. And then having that bridge of like having that perspective of being an able-bodied person who is getting used to someone who is losing their sight, right?
Mm.
And then having being able to have the teachable moments where it's just like, oh yeah, the cane's used for this. And before you move on to the next question, a funny moment was when I
Please.
was in Jamaica. I remember
Mm.
that was kind of the first time I really used my cane in front of my friends. And it
Mm.
was one point where you could kind of tell they're like, oh, you don't need that here with us, right? But then
Yeah.
I was using my cane, I was going down the stairs. And one of my friends was just like, yeah, yeah, keep using that. Oh my gosh, you're going downstairs like flying down the stairs, right? So even aspects such as that, I feel like it's just a beautiful community. And then one last thing is family, right? Like
Of course.
having the support of family. And I feel like, as I made mention, having your vision deteriorate and get a little worse, and for your family to still support you and still ask you like, how can we help? And although coming from a different culture, sometimes it's hard to kind of not be like, oh, just stay home, don't do that, oh no, that's too dangerous, or don't take those risks, oh, like do but at the same time, I feel like my family is very supportive, and they do push me, and I I really appreciate that for sure.
That's so nice to hear. How excited were they when they heard you jumped out of a plane?
I don't think my parents know.
Oh, okay. Never mind. That was somebody
But
else. They don't need to know.
yeah, but no, they eventually find out.
They don't know.
Mm.
No, thank you for that answer. My next question is, what are your hopes for the future in terms of how society views and treats individuals who are both racialized and have a disability?
This is such a good question, and this
Yeah.
is a question when you first posed it to me, made me smile, and when I talk about it's gonna definitely make me smile for sure. It's the fact that both identities can be incorporated.
Mm,
And I find for, I would say, kind of people who come from developing countries,
mhm,
is the fact that disability was so faux pas and like either
mm,
hide disability or write the person off.
mm,
So the one thing that will definitely I want to see for sure is it to be normalized,
mm,
and for individuals to get the same attention and the same accessibility and the same respect that is kind of seen in North American culture, where
mm,
here's me, I could go to Ghana with a cane and they'd be like, okay, like you're a sighted guide, or uh, have a regular discussion with you and not feel that, oh, you're like, don't talk to him, or it's like he's cursed or something, and just
mm,
feel that, like, even for myself, like you could walk in a barber shop with your cane and buzz like, yo, sit down, like come over here and just crack jokes, and that not to even be a thing, and to have that comfort of, yeah, he has a cane, so what? You know what I mean?
mm.
And like I said, I feel that I really want to see both sides represented. So a perfect example, like we have Caribana in Toronto for those who are not in Ontario, and even to have a float for an organization, a disability focused organization,
Mm,
right? Have that representation, and people still, it's still jumping and waving and whining and just having a good time, right? Or uh, to have that understanding in cultural events, right? So it's just to normalize disability and not have it where you have to stay away, right? I feel like that
right.
would be a beautiful thing. And even also something that's very beautiful that I'm working on with my employment, and even the side gig as well, is educating the youth, right?
Yes.
And even the presentations that I do, like for kids and young people to just get it, right? Like,
Mm,
oh, like that's a person with a cane. Oh, like let me ask if they need help. If they don't, let me back off. And I think we're getting to a place, and we're gonna see it. And there's even been times where it would be a parent with their kid, and the kid would be like, "Oh, what's that?" Right? And then
mm,
I
mhm,
unfold my cane, and I'm just like, "Hey, it's a cane. Do you want to check it out?" And they're checking it out, and not feeling like, "Oh, Jimmy, get away from there," or "Oh, Jerome, don't touch that," right?
right.
So I just wanted to have a place where it's just like that fair treatment. You could walk in anywhere and just feel that you could be you, right? And you
Mm,
could be you in all aspects. It doesn't have to be just like, oh, I have to pick or choose. Like, am I disabled today or am I Black today, right?
mm.
Like even the small things, having braille books for Black authors, right?
Ah, yeah.
Or audiobooks for Black authors, or descriptive video for Black TV shows, or
Mm,
even like when you go into the Black churches for them to have accessible um ways of hymns or stuff like that, or keeping consideration for a person
yeah.
who lives with a disability. So I that's one of my goals to really, really push for that for sure.
That's so beautiful. And as you point them all out, I'm like, you're right. There's so many ways we can just further incorporate accessibility. Like we've come so far, but we could go so much further.
Of course, and actually kind of going in the realms of like entertainment, young people, the one thing that like I am just striving for, and this is, I don't know if this is a pipe dream or a big dream or like, hey, I'm saying it out loud, so could happen. But just I dream of a cartoon, an animated series, or an animated
Mm,
movie where it's a Black main character with a disability, and more specifically, low vision or blindness, and where the focus is not on the blindness. So just like, yeah,
mm.
that's who that guy is. Hey, what's up? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
it's not.
yeah, so that's the dream. And now I'm a little bit afraid where now that I said it on this podcast, someone's gonna be like, that's a good idea, and just like totally steal off of me. But it's okay. Hey, if it happens, right?
If people know how to get the series going with animation and things, they should link up with you, which brings me to the next point I was going to make. Let's talk about our shameless plug corner. You had mentioned you have a podcast and an organization, both the Brightside Scope and Lens Living Diverse. I hope I got both correct.
Y-
Shamelessly plug, tell us what you've been working on. I'm very
Yeah.
excited to hear about these projects.
Yeah. So the Lens Living Diverse is through CNIB Radio.
Mhm.
And with that said, it has a bunch of episodes to celebrate the intersectionality of individuals who are blind, low vision, and just their different identities. And what we really wanted to do was to look, actually, it's perfect for its name, look at a different lens of life, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of times when we speak about blindness, low vision, we have that usual, oh, like I'm going to speak about technology or I'm going to speak about
Mm.
travel or accessibility. But to throw that layer of gender, to throw that layer of race, to throw that layer of culture, sexual identity, sexual orientation, and all those different factors with our guests, where it just gives it a different recipe, je ne sais quoi, as they say, right?
Mm.
So it's really, really fun to be a part of. We have our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you could get podcasts, and it's just very, very interesting stuff, and it's just really cool themes and different output, valuable information.
Very cool.
And then with the Bright Side Scope, that's
Mhm.
little side gig I'm putting forth. And basically, what it is for any opportunity to bring representation into space. So whether it is a guest lecture for um, any academic institution, whether it is a presentation to a classroom, whether it is what I'm doing right now, being a guest on a podcast, information, or if you're doing a PSA and you're like, we need some representation, or even just like different aspects of consulting for accessibility or race, I
Mm.
will be your man for sure. And even if I don't have the resource or the support, I could get you in the right place. So even just an opportunity to bring that representation into our communities, our societies, and our media, because we really, I feel, have to, as I say with my mission statement, providing a new voice that hasn't been heard.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is this organization is going to explode and we'll be seeing you as a representative at the Oscars in 2026.
Of course. And I'll be like, I just want to thank the little people. You know what I mean? The
I hope we're
li
part of the little people.
don't know what? To me, actually, it's reverse. Everybody's big to me, and I want to bring everybody up with me. So you know how they bring a whole entourage to the Oscars?
Yes.
It'll just be like me with 50 seats, and you're included, Amira. So we got
You guys
this.
heard it. He said he'd take us to the Oscars. Now
Uh,
you have to stick to that deal. It's awesome.
hmm
So we talked about a lot today. I'm sure there are some things I forgot or have been sparked in you now. What have I missed, or what would you really like to highlight or answer for the audience?
And the one thing I also want to highlight, and I guess incorporated in like the bright side scope and even the lens living diverse or anything I do.
Hmm.
As you made mention, I do stand-up comedy as well. So even with that said, yeah, definitely, I don't know if there's any gigs or anything that you people would like something written for. And I also do hip hop R&B music, and I'm looking to actually write R&B music for anybody who's a singer. So if you want that as well, but I digress. Going back into kind of that comedy side and that lightheartedness.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely, I want people to remember with kind of the way I see life is, and sort of like what you're delivering with this podcast as well, is the fact that I want to bring warmth, conversation, and empathy to this diaspora of social justice and disability
Mm.
justice and racial justice as well, right?
Hmm.
And it's so heavy for us, right? Like when we talk about race and disability,
Mm.
it can be very heavy stuff. And I want to bring somewhere where, in a way, as long as I'm obviously not hurting anybody, where I can like joke around with my experience, right? And where we can have conversations and we could uh have a discussion back and forth and come away feeling warm and feeling that we are making a change at the same time. So I definitely want to kind of put that in the hearts and the ears of your audience that this is such a great time, and having organizations such as yours and having organizations out there and having people who are fighting for social justice and having people who are really kind of putting their foot down and incorporating all this. I feel like we're in a very beautiful time, and I just have
Mm.
a lot of gratitude, and I feel like it should be a time where we show gratitude and we just kind of get out there and really make a change. So yeah, that's the last thing I want the audience to remember me by saying
That
that.
no, that's very powerful. So, if I'm an audience member and I want to find you, where can the people find you? And we will link everything in the description of this video as well.
Yes, so I am starting off at Instagram. So it's a bright side scope. It is still kind of being developed.
Hmm.
Also, I have a website. It's brightsidescope.com, and it's up there, but it's still developed stuff. So, with that said, you could definitely visit it and get new aspects, see what I do, and kind of the background. Also, once again, the Lens Living Diverse. If you want to check out that podcast, that's Gucci too. That's definitely Gucci. So last but not least, actually, a Facebook page for the Brightside Scope as well. So that's where I post. things that I'm doing as well. So those are the aspects and the different places that you could find me doing my thingy thing. So very
Oh, that's so
exciting.
exciting. Thank
Mhm.
you. And so we will also be linking some parts. I believe we have some images and some maybe clips of comedy, as well as perhaps some hip hop, so people can get a little taste, just a little bit of some of what you have out there. Is this where they would reach you if they wanted to connect about hip hop, R&B, any public speaking, or any of the above? Are these the spots?
Yeah, of course. And then I also forgot to mention I have the Brightside Scope email. So it's
Uh,
Ben dot Aquaco at the Brightside or at brightsidescope.com.
Perfect. And I'll make sure again that'll be in our show notes. This was such a lovely episode. I want to thank you so much for coming and just sharing your story with us today. It's so beautiful to hear your experience and just such an engaging and funny personality to kind of explain, I don't know, everything. Like, what can't you do?
Thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate this. And I bet there's a lot of people out there who appreciate this too.
I hope so. Okay. Thank you so much. And for everyone, tune in to our next episode.
Stay tuned for a short clip of some stand-up comedy by Ben.
So, great experiences. The other day I went to my buddy's house, right? I went to my buddy's house and he said to make myself at home. So I went to his fridge, I grabbed a Coke, I grabbed some chips, I was chilling, I sat on his couch, and then I went to turn on his TV. I saw his TV and his TV was already on. And all I saw was birds in a background, and I'm just like, yo, I don't want to watch this. I want to watch John Cena. Sorry, Jason. So I want to watch TV. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, I get the converter and I'm changing it. I'm like, yo, the channel's not changing. Yo, I throw a temper tantrum. I'm like, why? Why is the channel not changing? Oh my God, this is so annoying. So all of a sudden, I'm trying to change the channel. I'm getting pissed off. I'm kicking the chips. I throw the Coke out the TV. I'm pissed. So then my buddy comes to me. He's like, Ben, what are you doing? What are you doing, Ben? And I'm like, yo, your TV's not working. And he's like, you're not watching the TV, you're staring out the window. And then that's not even that bad. That's not even that bad. So I'm not even embarrassed. So I look him straight in the eye. Actually, I look him with this eye over here. I'm still looking at the window with my left eye. And I go to him and I'm like, you think that's bad? Last week, I was staring at a fish tank for 2 hours. I thought I was watching Aquaman 2. All right, thank you.